Okay guys, I bought the Cioks power supply for my smaller pedal board. This is the SOL or SOL kind, which has 5 outputs ranging from 9 to I think 18 or something like that volts. And the main reason for getting this is because some of the pedals I have, they don't demand less than they demand more than 100 milliamps, and such as the Mako R1 or pedals like that, the more digital ones usually crave more power. So if I wanted to put together a smaller pedal board with those pedals on, I needed to have a much beefier power supply. So along comes the Cioks power adapter or power supply. In the box there's a lot of stickers. We always love stickers. There's the user manual, of course, nice to have. Displays all the contents within the box and the features of the power supply. So it's a fairly small one, or I should say a very small one, with those 5 outputs, and they're quite powerful. And they are selectable between 9, 12, 15 or 18 volts. And as we go higher in the volts, the milliamps go down. But I mean, for each and every, if you run them at 9 volts, you're supposedly having 660 milliamps on each of the outlets, which is more than enough, I think. We have yeah, what's this? Smaller card containing all the necessary functions. By changing up those dip switches, which we will see later, you decide what comes out from each and every one of these individual outputs. As a default, they come with 9 volts, so 9 volts at 660 milliamps, but you can switch it up to 12 volts, 500 milliamps, 15 volts, 400 milliamps, or 18 volts, 330 milliamps. And there's also this huge pamphlet that describes all the different plugs that you can use, and are some of them, or most of them, I suppose, are part of what's in the box, as you will see. But there are different options also, depending on what type of pedals you have, what they crave. And for ease of access, they've also described which type or brand of pedals that usually go with this and that plug. Easy. And then we have, let's see, all the cables. As you saw on the pamphlet before, there are different colors for different sizes, and apparently, as the guys at Cioks do, they put an RCA connector on the end that goes into the power supply, and then depending on the pedal you have, you use different kinds of plugs. So that's how they do it. A regular power cable. What's this? That's Allen key with some screws, possibly to fasten the power supply to some sort of pedal board. And then of course we have someone's already been here, as you can see. This is the power supply itself, and it's the ratings are on the power supply itself. The neat thing with this one, it's fairly low. It builds fairly low, and it's just enough to fit the power cable, incoming power cable. So it will be a snug fit on the pedal board. It doesn't take up so much real estate. It could even slip under the pedal board depending on the pedal board you have. But you also see the dip switches here. So currently, as I said before, default they're set to 9 volts. And depending on the cable you have, the pedal you have, you will be able to switch it up. I think, for instance, the ODR1, I think you can run it up to 18 volts or something like that to get more headroom. The Noble's ODR1. So who knows? We might try that. I got one on one of the pedal boards. So this is the Cioks power supply, the SOL power supply, with 5 outputs. And I think it's a really good bargain for the smaller pedal boards where you use more modern pedals such as the Mako series or something like that. It seems to be that the more digital you get pedal wise, you also need more milliamps to run those. More analog type pedals, they run fairly good with just up to 100 milliamps. Hopefully this will solve a lot of problems with me trying to design a small and gig friendly pedal board. So this is the pedal board. I have a Qtron, a pitchfork, a golden acorn overdrive special, a tremolo from MXR, and the Mako series R1 from Walrus Audio. And this bugger unfortunately requires 24 volts, so it will still need a separate adapter for now. I know there's some sort of double-edged cable I could perhaps be using from this one, but on the other hand I have 5 outputs, 5 pedals, so this bugger, well, he needs to use his own. But for the other 4, the main problem here is the Mako series reverb, because that one requires more milliamps than the previous power supply I had could deliver. However, this one by far delivers enough milliamps for the reverb to be fully functional. You might get some strange behaviors, errors, pedals that do not want to run correctly or makes noises or anything like that. Of course you need to have the correct polarity, but if the milliamps isn't enough, then you'll be having a pedal that isn't behaving as it should be. So with the new power supply, I will stick some Velcro on the back to fit it to the pedal board, and I will run lines to each and every one of the pedals, these 4 pedals that need power. I might switch out the golden acorn for the Noble's ODR1 just to be able to run it at a higher voltage to see if I get more headroom on that pedal, but we'll see. For now I will just make sure that this pedal board is readily available for my next rehearsal. Okay, so I'll start with attaching this one to the pedal board with some Velcro. I cut this one to size, but I need one more. I'm using and has been using this one. Extra starkes klettband, selbstklebend. Power, top grip, extra strong. I mean, it's the one. So let's go ahead and cut some more Velcro. Since it's as strong, I don't need that much. I won't be tossing the pedal board around, so hopefully this will be enough. So I will attach the Velcro like this. I think I can leave those out without removing them. We'll see about that, but I'll start by attaching the Velcro. And hopefully it doesn't get too hot. Then we may need to reconsider this solution of having it on a pedal board like this. I might need a new pedal board, who knows. The idea is to have the pedal board like that, the power supply like that, and see if it attaches. I think it does. Yes, sure it does. A big whack on the top and it will sit like good. So I noticed that they are sending me, I could have read it also, but they are sending a daisy chain type cable, which means that since these three doesn't require as much as the limit on one of these, I could run all of these three with just one output. On the other hand, I could use one output to power all these three. However, I don't know if that adds noise to the overall sound or if it's good enough to do that, but it's possible to do that, which is a good thing. I also get a couple of single pedal cables of the same kind. I've pre-read their pamphlet, and I see that the ones with a black connection are the ones that power most regular pedals, such as the Boss type pedals, the MXRs, this one from One Control, EHX, and so on. So I would be good with those. There are a couple of others too. I have a red one here. Haven't looked at really what this is. And I also have, let's see now, a green one. And a couple of more. I think this is, yes, interesting. This is also a daisy chain per se, but it's only with two. The other one is with three. And let's see, and there's also one single too. Okay, and yet another single. So one red, one green, and a whole bunch of single black ones, and two daisy chains, one with three and one with two. So I think I will connect for each and every one of them. And if I add another pedal or I grow this pedal board out, I might start using the daisy chain ones. But for now I'll go 1 and 1 for each and every output here and see how that goes. Another thing I noticed is that 3 of them are sort of a standard length and 2 of them is a fair bit longer. So I'll start with short ones and see if I will need one of the longer ones, but I will start with shorter ones to get a more neat pedal board. Not that this is a neat pedal board in that sense, but you know, you get the drift. So I think I need to lift this one up, test the strength of the Velcro. It sits good. And I'll start attaching these, starting from the bottom, I think, the shorter ones, and end up with one of the longer ones on top, like that. Neat and tidy. Since the power connection is on the left side of the power supply, I aim it that way. I could perhaps, given the size of the pedal board, twist it a bit, but I think this will sit fairly nice. So I have the input of the guitar on the right side and output of the signal from the pedal board on the left side, together with a power connection. And let's see, the one furthest away would be the pitchfork. I'll take it under. This is another thing. This is there are multiple channels with cable management content. So if you don't like this, please look away. Hopefully it sounds much better than it looks. And for me, that's no issue. It needs to be practical foremost. And since I'm always changing up the pedals, I have a hard time zip tying all the cables down. I rather see it be ease of use and durability, and be able to switch out the pedal or two going back and forth. And by doing it this way, I think that that's the way I should continue to do it, because depending on the gig, depending on the songs, depending on the mood, I like to switch up some pedals, and some of them, mostly distortions and such, are very different. They are different. They're different in the sense that they react differently, they sound different in a way that, I mean, if I have a tremolo that I like, I'll stick with that. But the guitar, the pickups, the mood of the song, or whatever it may be, may require another different type of pedal. So I like this one. It goes well with my two-rock. It goes well overall with my playing style. It's very dynamic, so I can have it sit fairly low. So if I play nicely, it will be fairly clean. But if I dig into it with my pick or my fingerstyle playing, I will get another response, and I think this pedal does it really well. So for now this will sit here, but the main attraction of today is of course the power supply. All these run at 9 volts. This bugger requires more, which the Cioks power supplies gives out. So this will run nicely. This one doesn't require as much, but definitely sufficient from the power supply. And the neat thing with this one is that it provides me with 6 different tremolos, 6 different types of tremolos. It has some neat functionality, so I can control the frequency and the speed of the tremolo. I can also change it up so that the input signal controls the frequency of the tremolo. So a very, if you're on the hunt for a tremolo pedal, look into this one. Really good. And the pitchfork is just another tool in the toolbox, because if you're the only guitarist in the band, or if you want to distinguish your overall sound from the other guitarist, you could color your sound with a bit of the blend knob and an octave up or down, or both even. You could also set it so that you're playing just sort of like a baritone guitar. I saw this trick somewhere. And then you just roll down the blend so you only have the modified signal, and then you could choose to just lower 2 steps or 1 or 2 half steps, which gives a completely different sound. It sounds a bit synthetic perhaps, but on the other hand, and this is also a trick I found on the interwebs, is that it doesn't matter. in the context of a band. The audience wouldn't notice that it's synthetic in that sense. So I use this one as just another tool in the toolbox if I need to use it. For slide and so on, you could also add either you run it as a couple of half steps down, which gives a meteor, more Ariel Posen or people like that. I think it might be Ariel Posen or Guthrie Trapp who mentioned this one. Either or, doesn't matter. It's a good idea. Let's borrow it. So when you're playing slide, you could perhaps lower your guitar to get it to sound like a baritone guitar, or you could add an octave down and blend in the other octave into your original sound, so to speak, and get a much meatier or beefier sound out of your playing. So a really nice tool to have. The Qtron, of course, is it's not getting the power from the Cioks today, but I will perhaps figure out a way to do that. They had multiple other types of cables I could perhaps use in some way or another, but for today this is going through its own 24 volts power supply. This particular model has also an effects send and return, so you can control part of this the manipulation that the modulation that the Qtron does through what's happening in the effects send and return. I don't use it, not in this context anyways, but I use it also to color my sound, to make it stick out in certain songs and so on, from the regular clean sound or distorted sound I get from the other pedals, this one. But it's also one of those tools that it's nice to have. It got some options here on the mode, for instance, low pass, high pass, band pass, mix of a little bit of everything. The response of the pedal, if it's fast or slow, the range, and if I remember correctly, it's the range of in which it's supposed to work or do its thing. Peak, I think that is equal in electronic terms to the Q value. So how tight is it's sort of a wah effect, or of course a filter effect, or a wah effect, wah effect. But with the peak, you can decide on how narrow the manipulation will be of the sound coming in. I think, if I haven't touched the knobs, I think this is for me, with the guitar, I have a fairly good setting. The gain, it adds more gain to the incoming sound signal. So if I raise this up, it will be much more in your face. It will be much more powerful. So depending on the microphones you have, the pickups you have on your guitar, you might need to dial that one down. And also, if you want to have I don't know how much decibels, but sort of a boost when you engage the pedal. So you might have a fairly weak, not weak, but weak, a fairly weak signal coming in, weak clean signal, and to get the proper effect from the Qtron, you might want to engage the boost functionality. With the pickups I have currently on the main guitar I'm using right now, I think I have enough. TV Jones T90, their equivalent of P90, and I think it's well enough, so I don't engage the boost. But the signal chain is input through the Qtron, put it first before any effects, into the pitchfork if I want it, into the distortion pedal, the tremolo, and out through the reverb. Depending on the amp I'm using, I can use the spring reverb in the amp, which is great. But if I want some nice, neat effects that the Walrus Audio brings, I could put the reverb pedal in my pedal board and use that reverb instead. Because it got spring, Hall effect, plate, BFR, figure that one out. I think it says React and Air. So a much more diverse palette of reverbs in that one. Check out different reviews on YouTube to listen in on that one. It's really great, super many options within. It's a show in itself to just review this one, but I love it. It brings some dirt to the reverb. I can play around with so much parameters for the reverbs, and I store and work through 3 reverbs with this 3-way switch, and I store those so I have a normal reverb, a bit of a roomy feeling, and then I usually have a more lush reverb, and then I have some sort of quirky reverb if I want to have that one too. And the React part of this is really nice. It can do a lot of strange things with your reverb tail or reverb part of the sound. But this is what I wanted on my pedal board. I couldn't do that with the former power supply, so now I have it, and I'm really glad. I'm off to try it this evening at rehearsal and see how things sound, and we'll take it from there, see what happens. Like the build quality, of course, of this one. I like the small form factor. I'm impressed by the functionality they put into this one. The output, of course, the milliamps, it's possible to pull out of this one. I see that they have larger ones. I think they have smaller ones too. But this form factor, these kinds of options, together with the daisy chain cables, of course, and the other types of cables I could use. If I am to build another smaller pedal board, I would go with this one for sure. The old one gets to sit on the reserve if need be for another power supply, but this one will stay for sure. Thanks for taking your time and looking at this, and hopefully I can provide you with some sounds, how this sounds, and give it a couple of months or so. I could also give a follow-up to how well this works. I wonder if I'm going to get some less of noise reduction by using this one. I've seen examples of that with other power supplies of good quality, and hopefully this one is equally as good as that one. Thanks.